What innocent question that someone asked you crushed you a little. Just happened recently actually. A few years ago I had a pretty awesome life. I was married. My husband and I were trying to have kids, and when I needed a car we just got me and Sav in anticipation for needing it for kids. He had 2 and we planned to have 3. Well, things didn't work out and he ended up dying from drinking himself to death in January, and between that and 2 miscarriages, an ectopic and an IVF cycle that failed, I'm slowly coming to the realization that I'll never be a mother. It's painful to say the least. The kid I nanny for was sitting in my car and we were discussing his day when he says, "Nanny, why do you have such a big car when it's on you?" I wanted to cry right there on the spot. It just really stung. But instead I told him it was because I knew I would be watching him and I needed a car big enough for him, which seemed to placate him, and he then started discussing Batman with me. I am truly sorry that you have had to struggle like that. I just want to say that you had an awesome life a few years ago, and I hope you will have an awesome one in the future as well. Maybe just in a different way than you had planned. I grew up lower middle class and my parents had been severely injured by a drunk driver at the end of my 8th grade year and were disabled and no longer able to work. We basically had no money for school clothes, but my mother tried to get me a few cool shirts. I wasn't a popular kid and most people didn't really know much about me. In my freshman year of high school, one of the popular girls in my class asked, "Don't you have more than 3 shirts? I only ever see you in the same 3 shirts." High school in the 80s in the United States sucked. My mom accidentally called me after about 10 years of not talking. I answered all ready for a serious conversation. When I answered, she was like, "Wait, who's this?" I say, "Hey mom, it's Fraggle Rocks." Her reply is, "What hurt? Fraggle Rocks who? Why are you calling me mom?" She was so drunk high she didn't recognize her own daughter's name. Frick. I'm so sorry. That's crappy. I went to get a haircut for my fiance's funeral. It was Friday. He had died on Tuesday. My stylist, all bubbly, said, "It's been a while. The last time I saw you, you were just about to move in with your boyfriend. How's it going?" The word stuck and I kind of rasped it out. Honestly though, her reaction was so wonderful. She was behind me and just put her hands firmly on my shoulders and looked me in the eyes in the mirror. No shock. No stupid platitudes, just silent, genuine empathy. The rest of the haircut was pretty quiet, but she did everything so, lovingly, and didn't make a big deal out of it when I cried a little. That is a beautiful, touching story. Thanks for sharing. I teach 1st grade and was talking about how I've been married for 5 years. One student asked, "How could you not have a baby by now?" Not wanting to explain multiple miscarriages and IVF to a classroom of 6-year-olds, I said, "Being around all of you makes my heart so full that I don't think I have room in my heart for a baby." They all smiled. I smiled too. I've learned from my experience to never ask couples when if they want to have a family. Freaking hurts. A friend looked at me and said, "I know we've talked about it before, but how did you break your nose?" "I've never broken my nose, this is just how it looks." Whoa. Owen Wilson. When will you get better so you can play with us? My niece, who was too young to understand what disabled meant. She's older now and understands I will never get better. And we have adapted playtime to do things I can handle as well. But that broke my heart. My son undergoing chemo and radiation treatment for a bone marrow transplant. People, meaning well of course, would always ask, "How's your son doing?" I'd always have to fake a smile and give some shallow hopeful answer, "He's fine." He's a fighter, but deep inside the question crushed me every time. No, he was suffering, teetered on the brink of life and death. He was not fine, and every time I heard that question I was reminded of it and had to swallow the pain. My son has since recovered, but it was a very tough time. A waiter asked me if my wife was pregnant once. She was just bloated from chemo side effects. Crushed me. So glad she didn't hear. She couldn't have had kids and she passed 2 years back. We went to the place a lot, so as a young couple he had seen over the years, it was probably a reasonable thing to assume. Also, I'm doing okay. We knew she was terminal for most of our relationship. We probably did more in those few short years than we would have normally. It hurts a lot still, but I know I have her everything I possibly could in that time. Just remember to live life like each day could be your last, people. Mend that broken friendship. Ask out that girl. Follow your dream. XXX. Hugs. Rough night last night, usually asked with a big smile. I was asked that all the time when I was younger because I had a really obvious tremor. Thing is, I did not drink or do drugs at all and I had no idea what was wrong with me. I was eventually diagnosed with Graves' disease and treated for it, but I still have a bit of a tremor. I had hypothyroidism, then underwent radioactive iodine treatment and am now hypothyroid. My lips were often blue and I was always pale and cold with sunken looking eyes until we got my medicine on track. People asked me all the time if I was sick because I looked like I was dying. Thyroid crap really freaks you up, and when you try to explain it, no one knows what a thyroid even is. I could never imagine getting cancer at such a young age. How are you this strong, brave? Do you stay so positive? I've stopped counting the amount of people, especially working at the hospital. I'd expect a bit more sensitivity from them that have asked me that. Yes, I'm mid-20s, but it's not a choice that I'm staying strong. It's freaking survival. Every time someone asks me that, it feels like getting punched. No questions or advice here, just a heartfelt dang. Non-verbal, but the nurse at the flu shot station seemed unsure whether to give me the under 65 or over 65 consent form. If I'm going to be mistaken for being that much older than my actual age, at least it should be in the context of me getting a senior discount. My grandma's hair has been stark white since she was 23, and she has been getting offered senior discounts since she was about 30. She used to get offended, but now sees it as a sorta life hack. She still hasn't hit 65. Specialist appointment and they did the normal thing of checking contact details. They asked if the contact number and details for my wife were still correct. I started crying. My wife passed away this time 12 months ago. Surprising how much one simple question asked in total innocence can bring you to your knees. Sorry about your wife. Hope you're doing okay. My brother recently went through this at the checking info from a past visit. They asked if my dad was still the emergency contact. He'd died less than a month prior. It was like getting punched in the chest. I had no friends in summer school and a girl asked me if I had any friends. Like straight up, do you have any friends? Then became friends with me but still. I worked in retail when I was younger and people would always be like, oh, do you have any ideas for Father's Day? What did you get your dad? My dad committed suicide when I was 16. They had no way of knowing that, but dang if it didn't hurt. I've lost both my parents now, but mum as a kid. Yes, I'd love to make a Mother's Day card in school a couple of months after she fricking died. Thanks, frick. So when are you going back for your master's degree? I was so proud of getting my bachelor's and had no intention of going back because how rough school was for me. Back in 6th grade we were watching a film in my science class. Of course, my table took this opportunity to just chat. Don't remember exactly what we were talking about, but my friend finds out I didn't know the word vagina, knew the body part just not the term. I didn't get to explain that to the table because his immediate response was, "Didn't your dad ever have the talk with you?" I spent the rest of the period with my head down crying. My friend kind of freaked out. He demanded that no one at the table say anything freaking related because he thought that maybe I was crying cause I wasn't mature enough to talk about that stuff yet. I told him later that night on RuneScape that my dad had been arrested about a year or two ago and that was the reason for my reaction. I'm 25 now and deaf over it. LOL. But at the time that question destroyed me. It was good though, he was the first person I'd talked about it with and it brought us closer at the time. Dang, that one's really rough. Sounds like an honest mistake though, and it seems while messy your friend's intentions were pure. When I was 13 my mom got a divorce from a man who I can only refer to as a step monster. I worked all summer to save up money since we didn't have a lot and I was worried we wouldn't have enough to pay the bills. I ended up having a few dollars left over and wanted to buy my mom a gift, and she mentioned she needed a new watch for her birthday. I went to the jeweler and got a $100 gold Citizen Evo Drive watch. It was functional and it looked really nice. When I gave it to her, her first response was, "Thanks honey. Did it come in silver?" I was crushed. Insult to injury. She started dating a guy around the same time and he bought her a crappy silver watch. She ended up wearing his over mine. 18 years later and it still hurts when I think about it. I promise I didn't let it ruin my life. Just one of those memories that sticks with you. If when I ever have kids, I know to never brush off their gift. I can't imagine having my child feel the same way I did. AWW as a mom, I think what you did was so beautiful and I'm sorry your expectations weren't met. I love that you did that for your mom, and if I was your mom I would treasure that watch for the rest of my life. Hopefully one day your mom's eyes will open and she'll see that her children are the most important, most special people on earth. You're a good egg. If my girlfriend at the time was my daughter, we're only 2 years different in age but I look old AF. I was only 22 lol. Not a question, but my 8-year-old niece once remarked, "You don't laugh anymore." This was over a year ago when I was having a rough time, but I'm doing much better now. Thank you all for your support and for sharing your stories. I wish you all the best. My nephew once asked me, "Uncle Fuss Rohna son, why do you look so sad like dang kid? How are you handling everything?" My notary public, who also happens to be my boss's boss while notarizing my divorce paperwork. Completing a divorce packet with no help from an attorney can be a real pain in the butt, but at least it kept me focused on the bureaucratic bull's nonsense part of it rather than the fact that my 9-year marriage was ending. Turned out that as soon as someone asked me sincerely how I was doing, the answer was not at all well. I went back to my desk and had a panic attack. Why don't you live with your parents? I live with my grandparents because I didn't want to live with my abusive stepmoms on both sides of the family. They all live down in Texas while I'm in Colorado. Still hurts a little when people ask, though. My stepdaughter's aunt, actually mom's aunt, used to constantly ask her why she didn't want to live with her mom. Starting when she was like 5 yo, the answer was because mom didn't want her. I work at a pretty boring convenience store and my neighbor down the street, young maybe 12-13-year-old kid, was there. Good kid, usually hangs out there and talks to me. One day I was drawing cartoons for him by his request and he said, "Wow, you're really good at making cartoons. Why don't you just quit this job and become an animator or make comic books?" Really bummed me out, cause when I was his age that's all I wanted to do, but never was financially ever given even the slightest opportunity to go to school for something like that, and I'll never have the motivation for stuff like that working 50+ hour weeks in retail, heck, just to barely make ends meet. Plus I remember being his age and thinking people could still do whatever they want when they grow up. I don't quite have everything in order yet, but I've got some new ideas and perspectives from all of you for sure. I think I will start some sort of webcomic or multiple, possibly some for children and bilingual as well. I didn't even realize how many options I had. That's a tough one, especially when it can remind you of those dreams. On the flip side, that was quite a compliment from that kid. I bet you could find a way to use your gift by teaching kids how to draw at the Wild Boys and Girls Club. Just a thought, might bring some fulfillment. What do you see when you look in the mirror each morning? My friend was having some body issues and she asked me this question since I was one of the most confident people she knew. She learned maybe a bit too much that day. Last week, my son's therapist asked me how I was holding up with everything that has been happening, and if I was remembering to take time to care for myself while I was working on helping my son. I imagine she was thinking I would just give her my usual, "Oh, I am plugging along" response. Instead, I broke down and started sobbing and word vomited how bad crap is and how hard a time I am having and what a selfish piece of crap I feel like for having the audacity to feel so bad when my son is having such a hard time. Not my best moment. My son is doing much better. He feels safer and he knows he has a strong group of adults behind him that love him, believe him, and are working hard to protect him. And I am working on getting myself a therapist as well. Thank you for the idea of online therapy, because that is something I had never considered but is probably a great solution for my time issues currently. We are going to be okay. I know that. Right now feels pretty hopeless, but I know we will get through this. I appreciate the encouragement. How's your brother doing? Haven't seen him in a little while. He passed away 2 years ago. That wasn't very fun. I'll add to my story further by saying a close second place would be, why wasn't your dad at your brother's funeral? Life sucks sometimes. Someone once asked me, don't you want to be a mom? Yes, I do. But as I'm single, over 40 and not rich, that's probably not going to happen, and it devastated me. I had to say yes, I'd love that, and then excuse myself to go home and cry. Lots of innocent students have asked me if I want kids or think I'll ever have kids. After 3 miscarriages, I really don't have a good answer for that one. Are you okay? You seems a little off. I've been diagnosed with chronic depression and paranoia disorders for years, and I thought I was doing a decent job hiding it from all my friends. But apparently it wasn't good enough, I guess. It's okay to be depressed. The more people that know, the less you have to hide. Someone jokingly asked me if I was high because my eyes were red. I had just been diagnosed with an eye disease and told I would go blind before 50. My eyes were red from my medicated eye drops and partially from crying. I was only 16 and having a hard time coming to terms with it. My 5-year-old cousin asked me where grandpa was when we were getting ready to head to his funeral. Everyone went silent and we just kind of stared at each other until my dad managed to distract her. It was brutal. I feel like I should elaborate on this. This was the first family death I've experienced, so I barely knew what to say to older children, much less a 5-year-old. We didn't want to tell her anything because we didn't know what her parents told her, so we felt like it was best to change the subject. That being said, watching children react to seeing the body at a funeral is probably one of the worst feelings I've ever experienced. When will we dig up Dad? Asked by my almost 5-year son. He's never met him as Dad died 3 months before birth. This goes along the question, when will Dad stop being dead? My 4-year-old died. It amazed me how many times little kids or family friends have to be reminded. Co-worker innocently asked, who does the cooking at your house? I had very recently separated from my wife and was living alone. Chef Boyardee. Sometimes Miss Calendar. If I'm lucky, Betty will bring by a treat or two. I also sometimes stop by Aunt Jemima's place for a late breakfast. Speaking to my coach the other day, she asked me, how are you feeling? And I honestly did my best not to cry my eyes out. I just got out of school and have to figure out what I wanna study next year while balancing 3 jobs that barely gives me enough for rent. So, I feel bad, to be honest. Honestly, you should let her know you're struggling. I bet she would be a good listener and might even have some valuable advice. She asked because she can probably see you're stressed. Hugs from an internet stranger who's been there. Why don't you ever talk? Are you unsociable by a classmate? When I was in high school, as someone with severe social phobia who was struggling to hide it at all costs and to be normal at the time, I died a little inside. One time a girl I had a crush on asked me, oh wait, aren't you gay? Also a runner-up. How are things going with XGF? I dropped out of university a few months back because I wasn't happy. I've since moved home, and sometimes at work, people I haven't seen in a while will approach me and ask how school is going. It was my decision to leave university, but when people ask it about, I can't help but feel judged when I say I've dropped out. This is my first semester back after a 2-year hiatus, which means I'm the oldest one in my small class. Whenever someone asks, I own up to it, saying I had to leave due to mental health issues. Everyone gets it. Everyone has their demons. Just shrug it off and tell them mental health is a B. I was a freshman in high school in 1992 to 1993. My high school science teacher asked me if I was ever jealous of my older brother. He was a senior. I was kind of confused. She said, you know, since he is so smart, popular, and just has everything going for him. First time I had ever, in my entire life, considered that people viewed my brother as better than me. It has honestly kind of stuck with me. That was 26 or 27 years ago. One day I said to my mom I was going out with friends, and she asked, you have friends? Like it was a joke, but dang, I felt that so hard. Oh man, a diss from your mama is always a sucker punch. When me and my dad and my sister were driving to another town to get away from my mom so we could eat without getting yelled at, stuff thrown at us, my sister asked why mommy was so mean, and my dad had to simplify to her level that her mom was an alcoholic. She was 6. I was the one who made my dad realize how bad it was. We had to draw a picture of our family and I didn't draw my dad. My mom asked why he wasn't there and I said because he lives with grandma. My dad was an alcoholic and they fought and my mom would throw him out. He was thrown out so often I just thought he didn't live there. Why is my son's name still rear facing in his car seat? I never used a car seat and I'm just fine. Father-in-law. I was in a bad car accident when I was little and both of my sisters were killed in it. Both of my sisters would have lived had they been in car seats. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.